This is Salam Radio, Peterborough's Muslim community radio. Broadcasting on 106.2 FM and online.
Assalamu alaikum, good evening. You're tuning in to Salam Radio on 106.2 FM. I'm your host for the next hour, Shaz Nawaz, and I have in the studio with me
Kieron Bateman, salam.
Walaikum salam. Kieron, how are you?
I'm all good. I'm tired.
You have been working hard today.
I have been working hard today.
I can vouch for that.
Yeah, you can.
For once.
For a change.
Yeah. But at least you're not working this evening, so when you finished here.
Yeah. I've got a few bits to do this evening for full work, but, you know, a little bit of problem solving.
You're not driving all the way to Covent Garden and back?
No, not driving to Covent Garden tonight.
Yeah, which is a nice change.
Yeah, it's nice.
As always, we welcome your participation, and you can do that by texting us on 07411 191 062, or even better, comment on any of the live streams on Facebook, YouTube, X, or Twitch. This week on Wealth Made Simple, we have a very interesting topic. Well, at least I think it's interesting. I think Kieron, you think it's interesting too. And I hope our listeners, viewers, will feel the same if they don't right now in the next 60 minutes. And it's looking at China's global and economic growth over the past few decades, and then drawing parallels in terms of what can we learn from that from a business point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you look at where China was, if you're old enough to remember where China was back in the 70s, for example, it's a very different place now, and the world view on them is very different now to what it was back in the 70s.
Yeah,
and there's no denying that. Yeah, and I think there is a phrase in a very famous film, Armageddon. You know, I love my film quotes, and it's very, very true in a lot of cases. American components, Russian components, all made in Taiwan.
Yeah,
and China capitalized on that sort of thing. But I'm
probably better we don't talk about Taiwan tonight. But we could do, I guess.
Yeah, but like I say, I'm jumping ahead. You know, that's a bit later down the road. Let's take it back to the
beginning. Entire kind of story to some extent, although obviously China has a long history.
Yeah.
Really, the recent history starts really from 1949 when Chairman Mao created the People's Republic of China. So the point I'm making here is it's still a relatively young country from that point of view.
Yes,
this is where it starts. I mean, they weren't doing too well in 1949. They weren't doing too well in the 70s, but 1949 especially.
Yeah. There was a lot of famine.
Yeah,
a lot of hunger,
and a huge population.
Yeah.
And that brings its own challenges in terms of trying to grow something. Because as you know, if you have a team of 2 people working and you have 10 clients, it's easy to change the systems, the processes, all the mechanical stuff, the components. Right? If you've got 10,000 staff, for example, and 1 million customers, it's harder. And if you've got 100,000 staff and
10 million customers,
it's even harder, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, it is.
And
this is one of those things where you don't get economies of scale. Or you do, but the other way round.
You have to work towards it.
Yeah. And
what's really interesting, and I'll kind of share this up front, because I, as sad as I am, follow China's story and growth very, very closely and carefully.
Well, you and I have discussed this on a number of occasions when we're driving in the car, going to or from events, and about how things are going.
And their GDP has been around, plus or minus, double digits, 10%.
Yep.
For a while.
Long while. And that's phenomenal. Given the global economy, and bear in mind their GDP is tied to the global economy. It's phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. They haven't getting double digits there or thereabouts, plus or minus a few percent here and there, but consistently And that's the key here, is consistency. They haven't just made it lucky one year. They have done this consistently, year on year on year. There's something in that.
And yet some of the other strong economies, the top 10, haven't had that type of growth, even when they were established to be the number one
In the world.
in the world.
Yep. They just haven't.
Even if you look at the Industrial Revolution in this country
We still didn't grow
and
back.
the empire,
Yep.
we weren't at that level of growth.
Nope.
After the Second World War, America
Wasn't at that level of growth.
wasn't at that level of growth. So, I mean, the direction that they're taking and what the future holds for them is phenomenal. Phenomenal.
Fascinating as
Yeah.
well.
And this all kind of started in the 70s when there was a huge focus on reform under Deng Xiaoping. I hope I've pronounced that right.
Let us know if we haven't.
But probably somebody knows how to pronounce it better than I can, or at least properly. And those reforms decentralized economic control to some extent. I know even people today would argue how decentralized is it, but it made trading easier and
It made trading
smoother.
more open to foreign investment.
Yeah, and they started transitioning from what we would call a developing economy into working towards a fit-for-purpose economy,
Yep.
as in more like a westernized economy, which are more mature.
Yes. Yeah.
And yet, I was talking to somebody, and they went to China in 2001. They said, they went on a particular motorway, and they call it a highway in China, I think. And he said, potholes, old cars, really old, and people are using other modes of transport,
Yep.
bikes and a horse and a cart and that type of stuff. And he said he went 20 years later, and he couldn't recognize the place. He said,
Smooth roads.
absolutely, it's like
Transformed.
being in the western part of Europe, for example, were the words he used.
Yeah.
It's just huge. And like we've said, the GDP growth from about the mid 1970s moving up has been phenomenal, huge. And I mean, the purchasing power that they have.
Is second to none.
I mean, even today, if you look at how much money they've loaned America,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's phenomenal.
Oh, crazy.
And
amount.
I
don't think even Elon Musk could pay back the amount they've loaned America.
And I think the difference, one of the differences that I've observed, Kieran, and this is again, we'll link it to business, is we'll call them empires. You can call them what you like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Superpowers, empires, whatever, okay, of the past had a very clear drive, whether the people who associate with those powers through their forefathers or heritage may not agree, but they had a particular aim, which was to go around different places and to control them
Yep.
and to take what they can, and the growth for that country was pretty much limited
Yes. Yeah.
on
it had to be.
purpose.
Yeah, it had to be.
Yeah, because if it grows, then it starts wanting to be independent quicker. What China's done is completely opposite.
Yes.
So if you look at Africa, if you look at parts of Asia, and as you know, I go to Pakistan 3 or 4 times a year. What they've done in Pakistan with Pakistan is exceptional. Because you know what they've done, Kieran? Something that you and I talk about a lot. They've done a joint venture.
Joint venture.
So I said, a rising tide raises all boats. We're rising. Come with us. We're going to help you prosper and grow. Now, of course, all of that comes at a cost.
Yeah, of course.
Let's not be naive about that. And that, obviously, cost is that there's a payback for China.
Yeah,
But if you're in a better place,
Do you care?
it's a bit like borrowing money from a bank. You're going to pay them back and there's a return. But if you use those funds, and again, I'm not here to encourage people to take loans or debt.
No.
They've got to do that responsibly within whatever their constraints and beliefs are. But if you do that and you make a return, and by the way, you don't have to take money from a traditional bank and pay interest. There's other forms of ethical banks
Yeah.
who will do what is like a JV with you. But even then, there's a cost to the funds that you've taken, whether you want to call it interest, whether you want to call it return, whether you want to call it margin, call it what you like.
But there's always
And
cost.
That's what China's done. It said, let's go on this journey together so we all rise. And so many countries in Africa are benefiting from China. So
Yeah.
many countries in Asia are benefiting
There's
from working with China. And I think that there's no one thing per se, but I'm linking it with business, Kieron, before you come in. That really is, I think, smart.
Oh, I think it's incredibly smart, but I also think that China is smarter first by doing this, because China's not just benefiting from, for lack of a better terminology, the interest paid back. They're also benefiting from lower trade costs in the global economy. They're looking at, sourcing materials that they need, raw materials, which are abundant in Africa, but not so abundant everywhere else in the world, and bringing it back to China to be developed into whatever processes they need. That cost goes down. So by putting a bit of investment in areas that they want to help anyway, but let's be real, let's not be naive about this, that they are looking at long term at how it's going to benefit China. They're investing and they're getting 2 bites of the cherry. They're getting, don't worry, we've helped you out, so we'll take the interest back. But they're also getting the lower cost, the lower trade, the cheaper trade, the lion's share of the prize.
And they're investing in certain types of industry, making investments which give them like a proper joint venture, long-term economic plan for both the country that they're investing in and for the People's Republic of China.
Yes, yeah, and that's just it. I mean, like you say, it's you can't step away from the fact that they are going to benefit from this.
Well,
And do you know what?
There are all those countries in
and around
modern
about
day,
way. Yeah.
okay, in an acceptable way,
Yeah.
because there's so much money owed to China.
Yeah.
If you think about it, it owns you, doesn't it?
Yeah, you can't step away from that. But when you bring this down to a macro level, and I don't have a lot, but I've got a good idea and I've got good work ethic and this, that, and the other, and that's great. But I don't have much. Mr. Shaz comes along and says, "Okay, I've got an abundance because I've put a lot of work and effort into what I've done. I will loan you £1 million." I say, "Oh, thank you very much. I now owe you £1 million plus interest plus whatever." But the cost of that loan to me is also not just paying you back; it's you get a slice of whatever pie I make.
Well, that's the smart way of doing it.
And that is absolutely the smart way of doing it.
That's what we ought to be doing being in business.
And in business, that we encourage people to do that all the time. They're just doing it on the biggest scale imaginable. They're doing it on a global scale. And that's impressive. Whatever else you think, looking at it like that, it's just phenomenally impressive.
If you look at how many people have come out of poverty since the 70s in China, I don't think any other country has done it to that particular scale.
No, I don't think they have.
It's a gigantic
Hugely.
improvement. Yeah. And that's why I'm a huge fan of looking at. And I know one country does everything right, by the way.
No, of course not.
And they have their challenges and their issues. But I'm just looking purely from a business point of view.
Yes.
What's China done that businesses can do and implement that in a much smaller way to be able to develop their business?
And that is something worth mentioning.
Diversification.
Yeah. And that is something worth mentioning, isn't it? Is that whilst we are saying China is amazing in terms of what they've done like a business, And that's the key point. We're not saying, every country should be run like China. We're not saying, we should all move to China. We're not saying anything like that. We're saying from a business perspective, what can you learn from this? Well, actually, there's a lot you can learn, because they have implemented in some of the hardest areas imaginable, and they've made it work.
Absolutely. Because if you think about it, back in the 70s,
you'll remember those days.
The main, yes, very clearly.
Me, not so much.
1-0. And the main kind of industries were agriculture, low-cost manufacturing. And I'll tell you what's interesting is after the Second World War, Japanese products were perceived like the Chinese products were perceived
before the Second World War.
Oh no, even of late.
Oh yeah, true.
People would call it cheap crap.
Yes, they would.
And I read the vision statement of the then Sony Corporation, and someone had a copy of the document. It's remarkable when they perceived it as the cheap end of the market, not taken that seriously after the Second World War. We know where they were, and they wanted to be the global leader. That'd be laughable.
Yeah.
Okay, that would be to some extent like you and I saying on radio here that you and I are going to be the next two richest men in the world. Most people will laugh at us. They might on our face say, "Oh yes, at it, boy, go for it." Yeah,
they'll laugh at us.
You can do it, but they'll be laughing at us, and that's what people were doing to some extent to Sony in Japan. And look at their growth.
Yeah,
phenomenal as well.
Well, I mean, you want to talk long game. So now, feel free to fact check me on this, because I'm not 100%, but I'm 90% sure that I did read that after it went out of fashion, Sony bought the patents to the Walkman.
Yeah.
There was a massive film out a few years back, Guardians of the Galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
They made a big thing about cassette tapes.
Mm.
And they sold the soundtrack on cassette tape. Suddenly, there's only one company in the world that is making Walkmans. And okay, in this day and age, they're a gimmick item. Let's not, But how much do you think they made out of that one film?
Mm.
Now, that's forward planning.
Something else interesting, what we're talking about, or we're bringing in Japan, as in the first rabbit hole that you've introduced.
1-0.
So, the first of many rabbit holes is, think about it. At one point, the watchmakers that were recognized around the world,
Swiss.
and even today, okay, and
without a shadow of doubt, Swiss.
yeah, timepieces, okay.
Timepieces are Swiss. Watches,
Mm-hmm.
Japanese.
And they came up and Casio.
Yeah.
So this is pretty much a plastic watch, which is
Digital.
with the battery.
Yep.
If you think about it, if you're comparing apples to apples, that would be laughable. Who wants to buy a Casio when you can have a Rolex?
Because a Rolex is 100 grand.
But do you know what I mean? In terms of, you can't compete with them. And look what Casio achieved.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And how battery operated watches then became more popular.
And became normal. And it's like Fiat. How many Fiats do you think are sold every year?
Not enough.
Well, some people might say too many, but yeah, not enough. But many Fiats are sold every year, to the everyman, the every woman, the every person. How many Ferraris are sold each year?
Even less.
Yeah, not nearly as many. They're the same company though.
Yeah.
But your marketplace is vastly different. If we're marketing a Ferrari, when was the last time you saw a Ferrari advert on television?
They target it.
I've never seen a Ferrari advert on television.
Targeted marketing, yeah.
Why is that? And
They know
this is a true statement.
They know where the people are.
This is a true statement. You won't see a Ferrari advert on television because Ferrari drivers aren't
It's a waste of money.
Aren't watching television.
Waste of money, yeah.
Yeah. But you go to a high-end, club,
Private
resort,
members club, yeah.
yeah, private owners club. There'll be magazines there. They'll have Ferrari adverts in.
Yeah.
Because that's where the clients are.
They know where they are, yeah, that's right.
They know where they are. They've done their research. But you will have Fiat adverts on TV because Fiat drivers watch TV.
Yeah.
It sounds stupid, but it is that
They
simple.
know their customer.
Know your customer.
Yeah, but that's the second lesson after JVs. And from
So back to China.
agriculture, low-cost manufacturing, they've now evolved into high-value industries, tech,
Yeah.
pharmaceuticals, green energy, and they're spending a lot of money right now, Kieran, on electric cars.
They kind of had to get into green energy though,
Yeah.
because
Because of all the crap that was dumped in China and then blamed on China.
there's that. But there's also, and a few years, 2014, I was in New Zealand, and I met this amazing couple. They were from Shanghai in China. They didn't speak Chinese; they spoke Shanghaise. It's a bit like Cockney rhyming slang, but for Chinese.
Okay.
I mean, imagine how difficult Chinese is to learn. We acknowledge
Mandarin,
that,
yeah.
and they're speaking in a subdialect. Gee, wow, yeah. Anyway, but they were telling us that there are certain parts of China where you have to import clean air, and the preferred clean air is from the Scottish Highlands. It gets bottled, it gets compressed, it gets and they breathe it in through like a gas pipe. That's what they were telling me. Right. Because of the pollution that rampant out, that smog, like you hadn't seen since the the days of the Industrial Revolution in London. And they said, so they didn't really, as a country, have a choice about adopting green energy if they wanted to preserve their people.
Yeah.
More than anything.
And they saw it as an advantage.
Yeah.
And now they've obviously diversified so much. They're pretty much in every market.
Yeah.
Every market. Pretty much.
Pretty much, yeah.
And that, and they are soon, but some people try to resist, they are going to become the world's #1 economy.
I don't think you can argue that.
Yeah. And
look at the numbers. Look at the statistics. Look at the growth rate. Look at their gross GDP. Look at their buying power. Look at their purchase
their
power.
investments,
their investments,
JVs,
their JV.
all the countries they're working with.
You just can't argue that they are going to be the #1 economic superpower.
A matter of time.
It's not a matter of if,
the
it's
US
a matter
dollar
of when.
it stops becoming the global
Default.
default for the main
The same way the
exchange.
pound, the same way the pound ceased and the dollar took over.
Yeah. And but they're doing it in an interesting way, Kieran. But before we talk about that, I think apart from obviously focusing on growth, sustainability, as in sustainable growth, as opposed to
Massive growth and then falling over and toppling because they can't sustain it.
Sustainable goods.
Yeah.
Is they invested heavily in education.
Yeah, which is something that we're going to get onto next week. Is the UK education system? We said we were going to talk about it. It's on my notes.
Okay, cool, good.
And we'll come back to this and show you the difference between the Chinese education system and the British.
Well, they created these super schools.
Yeah, they did.
Going back about 30 years, and that's maybe it was before them, but where they should send children, and those children were trained and taught for longer hours than what we're trained and taught. So they start 5, 6 in the morning. This is first hand from a couple of students who are friends, and I know them reasonably well. And they were spending like 8 to to 12 hours a day at school.
I see no problem with that.
Yeah. But I'm telling you, Kieran, they are sharp. And if I ask them, what about all the friends who went? Every single one of them, okay, went to university. Not saying that's a good thing, by the way, but this is how they're and they're all leaders in whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
Exceptionally smart. I mean, you spent 10 minutes with them and through osmosis, okay,
Your IQ goes up.
your IQ goes up. I'm seriously, really, really, really. But that was the emphasis that they put on education, because they knew education will help us alleviate poverty and many, if not all, the other problems that exist in the world for any country or nation.
But you've got to start at the roots. Start the ground up.
And that itself is interesting.
And that's what we'll cover next week.
We're going to cover next week. And we're going to go to a short break. Just after the break, we'll talk more about China and business lessons and parallels we can learn from it. See you very shortly.
You're listening to Salam Radio, and it's now time for Isha Azan.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله لا إله إلا الله
الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم، وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة وابعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته. اللهم آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم بك نحيا وبك نموت وإليك المصير. رضينا بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبمحمد صلى الله عليه وسلم نبيا ورسولا.
اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى
Peterborough's community radio station. Salam Radio, 106.2 FM.
Assalamu alaikum. You're listening to Salam Radio 106.2 FM. I'm your host, Shaz Nawaz, and I have in the studio with me
Kieron Bateman.
If you've just tuned in, thank you very much for tuning in. And if you've joined us after the break or you stayed with us during the break, it's nice to have you here.
Thank you and welcome back.
Always a pleasure. As always, we welcome your participation. You can do that by texting us on 07411 191 062 or comment on any of the live streams on Facebook, YouTube, X or Twitch. This week on Wealth Made Simple, we're talking about the phenomenal change, growth, economic growth of China since 1949 and more since the 1970s, and then drawing parallels to what we can learn in business. In the first half, the two clear parallels we had, one was joint venture.
Yep.
And the second one was?
I have no idea, I wasn't listening. No, diversification.
It's the one that you came up with, that's right. Diversification. you weren't listening, you were just talking.
Yeah. 2-1.
Yeah. And it is just incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
How they do things. Do you remember that when they built that hospital during COVID?
In a matter of days.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Huge, isn't it? So we've talked about opening up and the economy and the reforms, the phenomenal sustained GDP growth rate.
Yeah.
Okay, around 10% every single year. I mean, easier said than done.
Far easier said than done.
Diversification. I mean, growing a business by 10% every year isn't easy.
No, it really isn't.
Yeah.
Growing a
Achievable.
country by 10% every year.
Yep.
Is even harder.
Yeah, I know people use different economic metrics, but GDP is a reasonably well-known one, which most people have heard of.
Yes, yeah.
And then the third one was obviously the economic shift in terms of diversifying into new and different industries, tech, pharmaceuticals, green energy, so on and so forth. And the second part of this is the global trade integration.
Yeah, joining the World Trade Organization, so that you can get. And this is something that I've said before, and I've said it about the UK, is when people say that the UK should stand alone and we need to, be our own country and all of this stuff, I think is ridiculous.
But look where it's got us.
I truly do.
We can talk about it now, and I think people are willing to have that conversation, which they weren't.
But
a number of years ago.
My main reason, and my reason at the time for thinking it was ridiculous and telling people that it's ridiculous, is that we look at this. The globe is shrinking. The world is shrinking. There's no getting around that. The advent of the internet, faster planes, better engines, better trade routes, bigger companies in multiple countries around the world that have headquarters here, there, and everywhere. They've got separate silos of their business within different countries. They are global companies. Are you going to, as a tiny little island, check out of global economics? Check out of global companies? Are you going to step away from Google, YouTube, Amazon, Sony, Universal Pictures, Disney? These are global.
Any partnership,
and you can't step away from it. So you want to step away and go, I want to be an island on our own. Don't be silly. You can't.
Again, the business lesson there for us, Kieron, is when you're part of a network. That's what the European Union was. Okay, it evolved and started becoming something else, and I get why some people weren't comfortable with that. But you're part of this network, this buying group, trading block. Nothing's ever perfect. No relationship, partnership, marriage is ever perfect.
No, no, really isn't.
It isn't, is it? From everything that people have told us, I mean, you and I don't really know much about that, but from what we've been told...
Well, that's because we're never home, because we're always working. We don't hear the bad stuff. 3-1.
Moving swiftly on. With that in business, form those relationships,
Yeah.
be part of that network,
Yeah.
be part of those associations, trade associations, so on and so forth. Establish those relationships where you can buy better,
Yep.
quicker, possibly
Less
cheaper,
friction.
less friction. And that's exactly what China's done
Yeah.
on this global scale. Because as we were talking offline in terms of whether you use Alipay, WeChat, and the digital means of exchange now,
Yeah.
which
So much
stops
faster.
reliance on banks and letters of credit and all those long
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. But
By
also-
long, I mean they should take time.
Yes, but also anytime you add another link to the chain of events, you're adding time, but you're also adding cost. Yeah, if you look at direct to vendor sellers, I can source a product in China, sell it on a globally recognized site like Amazon, and I can have Amazon fulfill it. The ability for me to do that is that there's less people in the chain. There's who I'm buying from, there's me, there's Amazon in this example, or my own website if I set up my own website. And then there's distribution out to consumers. Now, if there was a much bigger clientele, much bigger company, as it were, then I would be taking, the manufacturing is one set, and that gets sent to a wholesaler. That wholesaler then breaks down what the manufacturer's done into bite-sized chunks. That bite-sized chunks goes to a number of retailers, and sometimes to other wholesalers, just smaller wholesalers. So you've now got a combination of retailers and wholesalers. Those retailers and wholesalers, then the wholesalers obviously send it on to retailers. The retailers sell to consumers, and then the retailers sell to consumers. But every step in that chain adds a cost, because every single person wants their cut of the pie. Everyone wants to make a profit. Everyone has a business, so on and so forth. So that's why sometimes things are more expensive than they should. But also, if we're talking, artistic goods or artisan goods, then you've got to also pay for the quality. You've got to pay for the hours that go into making something. So if I want an artisan, we were talking earlier about watches. If I want an artisan watch, then I've got to pay for an artisan to make the watch, and I've got to pay for that skill, that level of expertise and stuff. But if I want to coin a marketing / selling phrase, stack them high, sell them cheap. If I want to buy in bulk and buy thousands of something and sell it for low cost to make it marketable to a wider audience because it's a throwaway amount of money, then I'm now looking at getting bigger margins or smaller margins for more pieces. But because I'm selling more pieces, I get bigger margin in the long term, if that makes sense. I think I explained that. Okay, average to bad. So when you're looking at what China's done, is they have built through their exports they have become the largest exporter in the world. And they've done that by making it economically sound to do business with them, even with import charges, import taxes, and working, outside of your own native country. They've made it so affordable by being part of the World Trade Organization, by making it frictionless as they can, by, making it cheaper to do. They've made it affordable for the world to shop in China, and the world has shopped in China. There is, no two ways about it. They've, the numbers speak for themselves. They are the largest exporter in the world. contribute to the global supply chains in electronics, machineries, textiles, green energy, things like that. And that wasn't an accident, because as Shaz said earlier, if they're doing all of this, then they essentially control the market. If they control the market, whilst it's still cheaper to go to China to make it, there is an argument that you're not sourcing local, sourcing individually. But when it comes to business, we're looking at the business reasons for this. If it costs me £500 to have something made in the UK, and it costs me £5 to have it made, and that's an actual different separate figure for a product I was looking at once, it would have cost me £500 to have it made in the UK, but each unit would have cost me £5 in China. When the discrepancy in can be that large, I'm buying 1,000 units. Well, that's £50,000, £500,000 in the UK. In China, it's £5,000 for 1,000 units. When they've made their economy work in such a manner that they can make it cheaper to buy in China than to make it in your own country, why wouldn't you buy in China? And that's part of what has made them the biggest exporter on the planet. Welcome back.
Thank you very much. And once you start buying one thing, you're buying other things.
Buying more things. There's always an upsell. There's always an add-on.
Yeah. And I went to China in 2006. Phenomenal place.
I really want to go. Yeah, it's on my bucket list.
Yeah, exceptional, and the people so friendly, hospitable. It's just incredible.
I've never heard people say bad things about it.
Yeah, and you should go and visit. So I had a clear plan.
Yep.
That's maybe the third or fourth business parallel, as you shared some when I started to quickly leave the room, in terms of this is where we're heading.
I haven't shared that parallel yet.
Yeah. No, I said that's the third or fourth business lesson.
Yes, absolutely.
You shared one or two others. I was hoping you might have shared something useful.
Well, what I was discussing before you left was I'll keep it brief. How China's led export growth because they have made it cheaper to buy in China than to make things in your own country.
And people laugh at that. Oh, it's Chinese stuff. But look where it's getting them to.
But they now control the market. And they control the market in so many industries. Because even if they put their prices up, it's still...
Which they will do as time progresses.
But it's still going to be cheaper than getting it made at home, as it were. Yeah. But also, if you're tied into other items which are still cheaper over there, if you've got to pay more for one set of items, well, it's worth the cost because the trade-off is worth it.
And people were laughing at them, saying, okay, because they used their population as an advantage, not a disadvantage. They used the labour laws of that time, which are different to the labour laws that we're used to and we believe in. And we can look at those and say they weren't right at the time. And then given people jobs, and as we said earlier, taken so many people out of poverty. It was the means to an end.
And even if it was hard work, you're taking people out of poverty. I mean, nobody wants to stay in poverty.
Yeah. But the big one obviously is which you've noted here is the BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, where they're investing a huge amount of money. I mean, hundreds of billions. Maybe even $1 trillion. I haven't checked the number, so I don't want to
quote anything.
Yeah, but I know it's hundreds of billions.
Yes.
In infrastructure across Asia, Europe, Africa, and they're reinforcing their influence.
Yeah.
As a global player.
Yeah, absolutely.
On the global market.
And I mean, how many times have you heard, that industries are dying locally? Big industries that used to be global industries for the UK aren't there anymore. Why? Well, because it's cheaper to get it from China, isn't it?
Yeah. But They also created this the kind of self-reliance and independence. They have their own version of Google.
Yes.
Have their own version of Amazon. You know what they are. They have their own version of WhatsApp.
WhatsApp.
We're going to do it in our own way.
Yeah, but what it has meant is it's very difficult when you're external to be internal. But it also means that it's a lot easier for them to monitor because they control it. It's a lot easier for them to track because they control
But
it.
that's part of how the
How they
People's
operate.
Republic works.
Yeah, it is.
And there's good and bad sides to that, by the way.
I'm not going to comment on that.
Yeah.
But it also means that on no level are they beholden to a foreign company. Whereas we, as we sit here now, YouTube is a Google company. Google, obviously a Google company. Amazon,
Social media platforms, yeah.
Facebook,
So on and so forth.
so on and so forth. From a digital, and that's just a digital age. We are beholden to other countries, other companies. Let's get physical for a second. There's a song in there somewhere. What car do you drive?
A BMW.
Is that English?
No.
When was the last time you saw a Rover?
Probably in the late 80s, early 90s, I'd say. I can recall.
Yeah, yeah. But they were around. I mean, are they still around? Rover?
No idea.
I couldn't tell you. You don't see them very often. We work very close to a Skoda dealership. Is that English?
No.
Kia? English? Hyundai? Toyota?
Yeah.
Mercedes?
Nissan,
Audi?
Yeah.
I think I've made my point.
Yeah.
Is that in physical products, something that you will use every day, your car. It's not English. The things you use,
And what was English or British? We've sold off Aston Martin.
Yeah, we've sold off.
Range Rover,
Range
so on and so
Rover,
forth. Yeah.
And this is Mini Cooper, owned by BMW.
Yep.
But you look at the digital assets. Our digital assets are owned by companies that aren't British, predominantly.
And China owns its own digital assets.
China owns its own digital assets,
And
so they're
I
not
think
beholden to it.
17 trillion
Yeah, your physical assets are not owned by.
were traded, exchanged
Yeah.
money for goods through Alipay and WeChat.
Yeah,
17 trillion.
yeah,
That's a lot of money here.
it's a big number.
I mean,
isn't
billion is a lot, as we've said, when you
Yeah.
compare a million to a billion or a billion to a million.
it? Yeah,
Imagine a trillion to a billion to a million. Phenomenal. But we're not going to go too down
let's
that
not go
particular
down that rabbit hole.
rabbit hole. So, but again, the drive on digital tech, okay, making payments easier, faster for their people, innovation driven economy, the green tech that they now are just, I think, a large extent leading on, because I think they are the world's largest producer of solar panels, wind turbines, electric vehicles, so on and so forth. Renewable energy, they've kind of
Cornered the market.
yeah, because the market to some extent.
But, and this is something that they have that we don't as a country, population.
Yep.
They have the people to make that sort of
People
thing
power.
work.
Yeah.
We don't.
Yep. I mean, even their trains are phenomenal.
Yeah.
You've probably seen some videos or heard
Yeah.
about. I mean, remarkable, those bullet trains, you know.
That's Japan.
No, but they've got
Similar-
their
similar
version of
thing.
bullet
Yeah,
trains.
yeah.
Yeah. They're just phenomenal.
Yeah. And I mean, the advancements in technology alone are, outside of Silicon Valley, second to none.
Yeah. But in China's happening in many different cities.
Yeah.
Shanghai used to be a leader now of
It's one of many.
Yeah, because back in the 90s, only 26% of the population lived in urban areas.
Yeah.
By 2020, Kieran, that was 60%.
It's huge difference. And I mean, okay, let's put this into perspective for people here. So there yeah, as of the early 2020s, late 20 teens, there's 3.5 billion people in China. Right, 26% of 3.5 billion. Let me just get a calculator quickly.
3.5 billion.
26%. Oh, yeah.
What you mean? Their
Their
population?
population was 3.5 billion.
No, I think less than that.
No. They had almost half the global population
When?
in the late teens, early 20s.
Okay.
Pretty
I thought
sure
it
of
was less
that.
than that. Okay. I thought it was more about 1.4 or something. I can't remember. But we can check that.
Well, I'll double check it.
We can check that.
But the point is still the same. If you've got, let's call it 1 billion people just for the ease of maths, right? 1 billion people. You've got 26% of that, which is 26 million people living in urban areas.
Yep.
260 million.
260 million. Yeah.
Now you've got 600 million. Yeah.
And that the growth that drives the consumption, the poverty alleviation, more access to education, easy access to education, so on and so forth. The infrastructure is huge, isn't it? And we already talked about the poverty alleviation. So now, Kieron, let's look at some parallels apart from the ones that we've shared.
You are correct. I completely apologize. 1.4 billion. You are 100% right. I don't know where I got 3.5
Do I get
from.
5 points for that?
You do get 5 points. 5-3.
So,
6-3 even.
thank you. So again, we've talked about the long-term strategic planning.
Yes.
And we say again and again and again, and it's the old cliche, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Yep.
So important.
I was talking with Usman about that today, actually.
Yeah.
Long-term planning and, fail to plan,
It's said
plan to fail.
that the Chinese make a business plan. It ain't for the next 5 years or 10 years or a decade. They're looking at centuries ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. And they are looking at centuries ahead. They're not looking at, now. They're looking at how do we make that work.
Yeah. So plan. Number 2, investing in innovation. No matter how small, big your business is, whatever business you have, every business must, can, and should innovate and to some extent disrupt.
Yes.
And that's what China does. Number 3, which is Kieron.
The adaptability and rapid execution. So, as an example, Alibaba's transformation from an e-commerce platform to a global tech giant highlights China's agility in shifting to what's working rather than just go, no, this is what we do and we're going to sit here and do this. Okay,
And
great.
the founder is a remarkable guy.
Phenomenal.
I read his biography.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
But the ability to go, this is what we do. Okay, I can see the way the market's changing. Right, change, move. We're doing this now. We're doing this. Let's go with the flow. Let's pivot.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
Number 4, which is one of your favorites.
Your favorite too.
Yeah.
Leverage.
Yeah.
And they have done that on a scale that is previously unheard. And I mean, look, if you want to take this to a very complex but very basic level, I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase this without upsetting anyone. So if I offend someone with this, I'm sorry. I'll preface it. But China, money makes the world go round. What China has done in the way that they've leveraged their global industries is they've taken over half the known world.
Yep. We have.
Yeah.
If you what the point we made earlier, didn't we?
If
By doing it at least
ethically.
right now, ethically.
Yeah, they've not
Right.
gone to war.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've not fought anyone, but they have bought their way into most of the known world.
Actually, their own countries.
And if China decide that, they want to actually own these countries, there's not a lot to stop them. There really isn't.
Yeah. But that's not the way they ride.
But that's not the way they work. That's not, I'm not doom and glooming.
Yeah.
I'm not, prophesizing, the
the human rights and everything else.
anything like that. I'm not. But what I am saying is, if they decide they want to own those countries, there is very little to stop them.
Yeah.
which is kind of fascinating when you think, people have tried to take over the world throughout history, and they failed. Economics has made it possible.
Number 5, a huge focus on infrastructure and the ecosystem, and a business has its own ecosystem, which we can talk about at some point.
Yep.
Number 6,
Inclusive growth.
7, data and tech integration.
Yep.
Government business collaboration has its pluses and minuses there, but there you go. Sustainable and green growth.
Yeah.
Those are the 9 parallels, other than the ones that we mentioned throughout the show. Phenomenal, isn't it? Phenomenal.
I would advise anyone to do their own research, do their own reading.
Yeah.
But it is really, really interesting. Once you
And follow
follow the money, follow the history, and follow the
success
process.
leaves clues as well, but what they're doing going forward, because whatever they're doing,
I want to be part of it.
Yeah. We hope you enjoyed this particular episode. Until next week, take good care of yourselves. Assalamu alaikum.
Stay tuned to Salam